myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Wednesday night, which means it's retro night. And as always, I'm joined by a panel of Newcastle fans to talk about games gone by between this week, Newcastle United and Charlton Athletic. So as always, I'm joined by George and Neil Mitchell, Steve Wilkinson, Stu Penman and Steve Hasty, as they give us their memories of trips down to the valley and playing games at home against Charlton Athletic. We'll also be looking at our celebrity Charlton fans and seeing whether the lads can guess who they are. And we'll also be looking at players that played for both teams. And then the lads will try and put together a team 1 to 11 of Newcastle and Charlton players. George, I'm going to have to ask you to turn the TV down in the background. I think it might be you. I can hear the television. I can hear someone's TV. I'm not sure who it is. Sometimes it's you, George. No? Anybody else? Nope. Steve, is it you?
Nope.
That's it. Steve Wilkinson, maybe. I don't know. I can't tell. It's a television I can hear.
Believe me.
Well, not only my telly's off, but the box is off as well. I switched the whole lot off.
Still there with me muted.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's a television.
Take a squeak.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody else go on mute and just leave George for now.
Yep.
That's it. Go on. Stu, it might be you, you know. It sounds like it's you. Might be a TV or whatever. I can hear something in the background. Aye.
Is it not the AC?
I don't know what it is, mate. No, it's like a commentary. It's like a talking.
That can't be me. I've got nothing on.
Weird. Don't know what it is. Everyone stay on mute anyway. George is fine. It used to be George. We used to have this issue with, but never mind. We're sorted now. Everybody just stay on mute. I've got no idea what it is. Okay, George, give us your first memory of Newcastle versus Charlton.
Right, well, first memory of Newcastle versus Charlton is a trip down memory lane again for me. Back to the Chicken Road Football Academy. Saturday the 18th of October 1952. So I'm just the wrong side of 10. And the week leading up to the match, of course, is when I used to start my education for what we were going to see. And Charlton Athletic was with the upcoming game. And it didn't always start with players, and that's what happened with Charlton. This Charlton game, their manager was a man called Jimmy Seed, and very famous coach and manager, and well liked by my family, the uncles and the granddad and my dad. He had a great name, and he'd coached right across London. He'd done some coaching with Arsenal, with QPR, and Tottenham. And in fact, it's the story is that it was Jimmy Seed who persuaded Bill Nicholson to go into football management. And if he did, what a pretty good job he did, because Nicholson was fantastic. So I got a great education about Jimmy Seed. And then, of course, looking at the Charlton team and were there any characters, any people to look out for. And there was two that particularly picked out. One was Stuart Leary, the centre forward, who was South African born, but came over here to Charlton, and that's him leading the team out. And he was a hit straight away. He was scoring goals for nothing. And indeed got so good that he got into under 23 side. But lo and behold, the FA suddenly thought, hello, he's South African. And then they banned him from getting into the full team because he was South African, which makes a mockery of what they do today. If your toenails got a relative in a particular country, you can go to them. The other thing about Stuart Leary, of course, he was an all-rounder. He played cricket as well. I think I sent you a picture of him in his cricket gear, Steve. Yeah, that's him in his cricket gear playing for the RAF. Because they wouldn't let him play for the England team, but they made him do 3 years national service in the RAF, which seems a bit of a funny one, but they did. However, he played cricket for the RAF, and then he went on to play for Kent, and came very close to playing for England. He didn't play for England, but he played for the MCC and all the other representative teams. But he was a fantastic sportsman. But more importantly for this segment, what a great centre forward he was. And in this particular match I seen with the family, he was really on fire. The other character in the Charlton team at the time was their goalkeeper. Sam Bartram was the goalkeeper. And what a character he was. He had all sorts of stories about Sam. And that's him celebrating 500 games, I think it is, for Charlton Athletic. But his trademark sweater, he's wearing old-fashioned polo neck sweater. Sam Bartram always wore those. And it was his trademark. It's reputed that despite the fact everybody thought he should have played for England, it's reputed that his character and such, and his sense of humour was just too much for the England lot to take on. So he never got a cap. But what a great goalkeeper he was. All sorts of records at the time of most shutouts and all that sort of thing. And that was long before people started to keep statistics. So that's the other one. The other person I want to highlight in this game is somebody who I think never got highlighted enough at Newcastle, and that was Vic Keeble, centre forward. Vic Keeble, I deliberately picked a cigarette card, one of them, in the FA Cup final, because up in my loft, I've got a box with about 6 complete sets of cigarette cards in that are 2 sets originally collected by my uncles, and the others are collected by myself. Now, as you can see, that one's got Best Wishes Vic Keeble on. Well, I can tell you now, I know that Vic Keeble didn't get near that cigarette card. That was either my Uncle John or my Uncle Tom. And if you go through that particular set of cards, I think somebody persuaded my Uncle John that if the cards were worth a bit of money, but if they were autographed, they'd be worth 10 times that amount of money. So he religiously went through them all and autographed a lot. And even when you get to Stanley Matthews, even Stanley Matthews has been autographed. But a man on a galloping horse can see it's not a real one. It's a forgery. The other picture of Vic Keeble I sent you, Steve, is in his West Ham shirt, I think. Yes, that's him. Vic Keeble, it's quite appropriate at the moment because there's been lots of stories about Gaza didn't want to leave, Andy Carroll didn't want to leave, Chris Waddle didn't want to leave. Well, Vic Keeble didn't want to leave either. And he'd had a bad injury and he'd been out, and Len White had got in the team, so he was struggling to get into the team. But at the end of the season, they were all getting new pay rises and all the rest of it. Everybody except Vic Keeble. And when he went to inquire about it, Seymour said, well, you haven't earned your pay this year. You've been injured nearly all the season. And Keeble sort of, thought that was a bit harsh. But lo and behold, what Seymour didn't know was that the manager of West Ham at the time was the old manager of Colchester that brought Vic Keeble into football. And so he offered Vic a 50% rise to go to West Ham. And when Keeble went to Seymour and said, well, make us an offer, and Seymour said, no. So off he went to West Ham. But what a career. Vic Keeble, 104 games for us, 56 goals. At West Ham, 75 games, 45 goals. And in his career, 295 games and 183 goals. And yet, he's just regarded as ordinary by us, by the fans. And he had something, he definitely had something special. Absolutely brilliant in the air. And in this particular match, October 52, he was outstanding. Charlton were giving him a hard game, and the only thing that was keeping them penned back was them having to look after Vic Keeble. And every time the ball went in the air, he was likely to score. 3-2 was the score, 41,500 at the match. And Vic Keeble scored 2, and George Robledo scored the third one. And Stuart Leary and Frank Locke scored the 2 for Charlton. And it was an exciting game, end-to-end stuff. And I can remember the chat all the way home with the family was about what a good game it was, who played, who did what, and all the rest of it. And our team was almost a cup final team. Michael Crowe, Stoke, Casey Walker, Robledo, Keeble, Hannah Mitchell, Bobby Mitchell, Jackie Milburn wasn't in the team that day. But Charlton's team, full of internationals. Yeah, that's a good one. That's nearly them, yeah. And most of them were in the team, yeah. Whereas Jackie Milburn at the back without his kit on, Fairbrother is the goalkeeper, and Joe Harvey, and Charlie Crowe, Tommy Casey, Ernie Taylor in the front row, second in from my left, and George Hanna, Bobby Cowell, and Bobby Mitchell. Bobby, incidentally, Bobby Cowell's wife's still alive, and she lives at Blythe, not 2 minutes away from where my niece lives, and see her occasionally. Elsie, they call her, lovely lady, but never mind. So 3-2 it was a very good game, and lots of things to remember and get involved about. And Vic Keeble was the star, and as I say, when you read his statistics, you think, well, we didn't treat him as a star. Charlie Crowe, yeah, we didn't. Oh, yeah, that's yeah.
Could be the program.
It is. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And as I say, a game well worth seeing, and a one well worth remembering, and a one which I thoroughly enjoyed with the family. And the chat all the way home, and the next day on the Sunday, it was all about the good things in the game, what they'd seen, the players, and remembering who was who. I mean, in the Charlton team, you see, you had Harry Fenton and a lad called Hurst, and a left winger called Evans, who were stars in their own right. So it was always going to be an interesting game. So that's my first offering tonight.
I found that picture as well there on Getty Images.
Brilliant. And that's Sam Barton sitting on his backside. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's George Robledo scoring his goal. I think.
Fantastic.
That's him there. Yeah.
Bit of history there, and plenty of photos, George. Always appreciate getting your inboxes and you keeping us right with these things, which is great. So wonderful. All right, Steve Wilkinson, on to you, mate.
Evening, everybody. My first game is the in the promotion season, Keegan's promotion season 83-84. A game we ended up winning 2-1. Horrendous conditions. Anybody at that game? I hope I've remembered the right game. I can always remember a game against. I thought it was against Charlton, where there was this sort of misty rain all through the game, and right there was a sort of hovering of mist on top of the crowd. Everybody's breath. It must have been the temperature and the rain, and it was just like a layer of steam. Fortunately, I was in the east stand in undercover, but at that time they had the roof off the Leazes end that had been off since '78, and it was probably when the ground looked the most dilapidated. It was just almost paddock size area behind the Leazes goal, and I can remember seeing this mist, and it was there all the game was this torrential rain came down, and I can remember one time to encourage the players on, there was a sort of chant of the fans, so more steam. I don't know if anybody can remember that, but just to try, it just was so obvious, this cloud. And I can't ever remember seeing that at any other game. You probably wouldn't see it now with the stands they are. But it was a game, we won 2-1. It was the foundations of the team that went up that season with Keegan playing so well, Chris Waddle, Beardsley, Terry McDermott, and others like Martin Thomas was in goal, John Anderson, David McCreary, Wes Saunders, Steve Carney, and Kenny Wharton playing. And another young lad playing at fullback, John Ryan, who actually set up our first goal, but we'd actually gone behind in the first half to a corner from Charlton. Had a defensive header out, but it was knocked back in, and the Charlton fullback called Curtis turned and volleyed it in. So we went in at half-time 1-down, and despite a lot of the pressure and despite the conditions, a lot of good play and passing from the usual stuff from Beardsley and Keegan and Waddle that made it exciting. It was sort of entertainers -1 before we got into the real entertainers of the 90s. But it was still always entertaining football, as you might remember. And eventually we got a cross from John Ryan from the left wing after just over 70 minutes, flicked on by Waddle, and Keegan came in right in the centre of the goal with a diving header into the top corner of the net for the equaliser. And then just within 10 minutes, repeated goal from Keegan, this time a right wing corner from Terry McDermott, and again Keegan outjumped the defence. For a relatively small guy, he was always good in the air as well, and a downward header, and it squirmed in over the line, and we ended up winning the game, getting into the game 2-1. That was the season we went up. We finished third in that season, but one ironic thing I think to note at that time, this year's Champions League finalists, Man City, Chelsea, were in the same division as us back in 1983-84. Chelsea ended up going up. They won the league that year, but Man City, we managed to beat Man City, and they only finished fourth. So shows how far you can come from that sort of depths of thing to what they've achieved. And while we had phases of glory in the 90s and early 2000 under Bobby, we never got to the levels they've got to. But all that's to come. I remain optimistic. So that's my first game. It was October 1983. 2-1 win.
Great stuff. Steve Hasty, good evening. Your first story, your first recollection?
Not so much a first recollection, but first story. I've gone for the season 2004-2005. A totally nondescript game, to be perfectly honest. And I'm hoping that my follow-on game that I've chosen will fall into a pattern here. So it's a home game, obviously. Newcastle United Charlton. It was February 2005. I've been having a look on NUFC.com. I don't usually look at .com for information about past games, but I thought I'd have a look on just to see whether there was anything there that might sort of, bring back a recollection or give a little bit of an insight, a different sort of insight to the one that I had of the game. Because I just remember it as a 1-1 draw. I remember Dyer scoring. And then I remember them equalising straight away while we're all sitting there. And I remember the game being one of the most shocking games that I'd witnessed that particular season. And I can remember, and it's actually in Biff's write-up on the game, he does mention the one thing that stood out to me under that particular game with Souness, and the way that the season had gone so far is it was the first time under Souness that we'd heard the chant attack, 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 which said something about the way that we'd been playing under Graham Souness up to that particular point. I'll give you the team rundown. I mean, we had, you look at the team, we've got Given and Go. We had Carr and Babayaro as the two fullbacks. We had O'Brien and Bramble as the centre backs. We had a midfield of Jenis, Fay, Dyer and Boyer. And up front, we had Amiobi and Shearer. And I think when you look at the bench you look at Souness, you look at the bench, you think about what had been going on. And you see that on the bench, while he's got Amiobi playing, he had Patrick Kluivert. And while he's got Andy Fay playing, he's got Laurent Robert on the bench. And if you remember rightly, at that particular point, I think Laurent Robert, it was pretty obvious from body language, from what you are reading in the Chronicle and what you are picking up, that Souness and Robert didn't get on. So that's why you ended up with an Andy Fay playing instead of a Laurent Robert. Laurent Robert did come on in the second half with 20 minutes to go for Boyer. And the other subs that weren't used were Butt, Harper, obviously in goal, and Aaron Hughes. The referee was a referee that we mentioned last week. Neil talked about, which was Mark Halsey. We mentioned him on I think it was on the Amigos show the other day. And believe it or not, this was a February game, 3:00 kickoff. It was 51,114, which was actually the lowest gate of the season. 51,000, remarkable. But what got me when I read .com, and we could go through the whole thing. I mean, obviously we had at the final whistle, it says there were blank-faced resignation from some who shuffled away, there were shouts of Souness out from a militant pocket in the East Stand. So that must have been you, Steve. Steve wrote and the odd individual howling incomprehensible insults into the darkened Tyneside skies. So that was obviously Mitch. So we know, we know what was going on in that particular game. But what I found interesting was at the very end there was a little write-out about Alan Shearer. And it starts off by saying that people keep trying to talk up the Shearer to play on theory, but on days like this, he must feel like packing it in at any moment as the end of the season stretch endlessly off into the distance rather than rushing up to meet him as was thought. For a team of internationals to be incapable of supplying passes to a man with 250 Premiership goals continues to beg our belief. So I think at this point, Biffa was really, really having a go at the rest of the other 10 that were in that team. And then he goes, and yet Shearer still trots out the party line and says the right things to the camera. And this is the bit that got me. More pundit than politician. I think, hey, you got that one right. So all the way through, Biffa has got this spot on. Alan, great pundit. He's not a politician. And then it goes on to say that if Souness is Tony Blair, then Shearer must be either Prescott or Gordon Brown. When does this mask fall, though? That's the big question. There was discontent all the way through. I mean, the very fact that we were in this situation. And Souness trotted out, but the even funnier bit was right at the very end where Biffa gets a little bit of insight in what was said, and Jermaine Jenis reiterated the view of Graham Souness. And I just picked this because we've had to put up with the mundane chatter of Jenis all the way through the last couple of seasons on Match of the Day, and now we've got him as a co-commentator on the Euros. And he said, it's important that the fans stay behind us and try to stay positive because what they do sometimes gets projected onto the pitch. Right. Well, thanks for that wonderful insight into how fans think. Well done to me and Jenis. He hasn't learned a thing, has he? That was 2005. He's learned absolutely nothing. A nondescript game. And if you think that's bad, wait till you hear what I've got to say about the next one.
Brilliant stuff. Great stuff. All right, on to Stu now. Good evening, mate.
Good evening, everyone. Right, the first game I was going to talk about was what Tom Lynch just mentioned there, the 4-3 when with 3-0 and got beat 4-3. Excuse me, but I opted to go for a Rob Lee double. And unfortunately, it wasn't for us. It was for Charlton. And it was back in January 1989. And Newcastle that season got relegated. And this is after the Gascoigne had been sold. And I think if we're talking about, when we talked about Everton, this is the game that Mitch said he went there with hope that we could challenge for the title because of the signings we made with Besant, etc. And, well, since Christmas Day, this game was our 9th game. And we'd only won one of those 9 games preceding this since Christmas Day. And this was the 21st of January. So you can see how packed the fixture schedule was. And just by chance, that game that we did win, and that sequence was on Boxing Day. So since Boxing Day, we didn't win one of the next 8 games. We didn't win this one either. Sprightly young lad, as I said earlier, by the name of Robert Lee, scored a goal in each half. And there was an air of acceptance or apathy, I suppose. You know, we've all been in the crowds where there's, you know, the fans would get irate, but it was just like, here we go. We know we're going to get beats, and something needed to change. And as it happens, the next game that something did change. That's when we drew 2-2 with Liverpool, and we went on a 7-game unbeaten run to only lose or only win one of the last 8 and get relegated quite comfortably in the end. So the season was in about 3 or 4 separate parts. It was like an unbeaten, a losing streak, and then mostly losing streak, to be fair. But I say Robert Lee made his mark on Tyneside that day, and it was great to see someone. He was still wearing the number 7 then, but he was playing central. We bought him as a winger, and you could see he had a bit of touch of class about him. And, you know, every time you watch the opposition, you think, oh, I wouldn't mind him for us. And at that time, he was gettable, but I didn't think there was any chance someone like Robert Lee would want to leave London to come to Newcastle, the state that we were in. And as I said, we ended up getting relegated. The atmosphere, and as I said, it was quiet. But when Robert Lee come back, he come back to the sheer excitement and the swagger of the entertainers. You know, it was like chalk and cheese for him. So that was the first game I wanted to talk about, just simply because it was the first time I'd seen Rob Lee, and I think he made a massive impression on each and every one of us and everyone watching. You know, he was a great servant for us, and you know, so that's the game I chose first, which was back in 1989. I went back 37 years, thinking that was a trip down memory lane. George went a lot further than that.
Great stuff.
Was that the game that was really foggy, Stu? There was doubts about it getting called off before.
It was a night game. It was dark. I think the game that people are getting mixed up with, it was a game that got postponed, and that was against Bournemouth in the Cup.
Got postponed at half time because they pulled the flanker. The rule was that if you managed to play 45 minutes, you didn't get a refund. So, as always, we all most of us stayed.
Got to half time.
Got to half time, and you couldn't see a thing in front of you. But then, of course, they said they weren't going to refund us, but they ended up having the replay and giving us all tickets.
Yeah, well, maybe George could help better in Steve, but you know, my memories going back there was a lot of the night games that were like pea soup anyway. You know, it was always seemed to be drizzling from November through to February. You know, so they all seemed to like just blur into one. So it's quite possible it was that game, Mitch.
Go on, Mitch. Your first recollection.
Okay, my first recollections was my first trip to the Valley. I'd been to see we play Charlton away before. But I think it was when they were at Upton Park. This time they were finally back in their real home at the Valley. It's an FA Cup game in January '97. The game itself wasn't particularly special. A 1-1 draw. It was one of those games. When you look at who was in our team, you know, we had Shearer, Ferdinand, Beardsley, Lee. And we went 1-0 up after 33 minutes, and everybody's like, right, we should cruise this year. And then between an inspired reserve keeper performance and my best chance falling to David Batty, who put it over the bar, we managed to rumble through. And then a player, you know, we've got these players that always seem to play really well against we. Well, this was one, Mark Kinsella, who scored an equaliser late on and took the wind out of our sails a little bit. The game itself, like I say, wasn't really why I picked it. The first one's a personal story. We ended up being the last coach away because coming out the Valley, a few of the lads limped down a side street to go and have a pee before they got back on the coach. And a voice from down the alley said, "Come on, lads, move along." And one of the wags shouted, "Why, like, do you want one as well?" And sadly, that policeman's sense of humour failed. So we were left looking for three lads that we couldn't find anywhere, as all the other coaches are pulling away. And there's these three being marched into the temporary Portakabin police station at the end of the Valley. And thankfully, whoever his superior officer was just basically told him, "Get these bloody Geordies away from here." So we were the last coach away from the game, thanks to some wag who I think that's actually a fantastic comment. I think that's a really good quip. Sadly, the police officer didn't. But the other reason for this game, what we didn't know while we were travelling back, was that Kevin Keegan had walked out the press conference after the game. And it turned out that was Kevin Keegan's last game as manager. He was gone within 10 days later. The pressures of the season before obviously had taken its toll amongst other things and what was going on behind the scenes above him. And really, it was such an innocuous game for his managerial career to come to a crashing end at Newcastle United the first time round. Because, like I say, the game itself was a nothing game. It was a game we should have won. But it was one of those stupid FA Cup games where you come up against an inspired keeper and a little bit of bad luck and somebody who usually knocks one in against you. And that was the end of that. And to this day, I don't know why he walked out the press conference. I never really got the full story on it, and I can't really remember the ins and outs of it. But what a sad and strange way for Keegan's reign to come to an end.
Yeah, strange, and one which upset a lot of the players as well. Often we have players on the show, and they often talk about that, that situation, done them on the after dinner circuit as well. Shocked, really, and people like Ginola and in particular who committed themselves to the club, then to be left high and dry. Shearer, who just signed, of course. Strange times, but good stuff. Big shout out to our sponsors, Spider VPN, who've been with us now for a few months. For all your internet security, Google Spider VPN, and you can find them at the top of the Google search list, and they will help protect your passwords, etc. And a big shout out to skipsandbins.com, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website www.skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Give the guys a shout and they will help you out. And also a big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle, and to John at Jab Signature for making the flyers. First time visitor of the channel, then click on the Newcastle Legends logo and click subscribe, and that's it. It is free. Still doing 7 shows a week. And hit the thumb up to like the video tonight, which does help us out. Click share to share it to your social media, and drop into the comments to talk to like-minded Newcastle fans. And of course, the Fab Four on Friday. As always, we do try to announce the poster, and it'll be happy days if the takeover goes through, guys. I'm glad to see I'm the funds. But yeah, very good. Very good. John got very creative this week. He's gone back to his old school ways of doing these, and I quite like that one. Happy days. Do you like it, Steve? Do you like it, Mitch?
I'll take that.
Yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it? Pretty good, Mr. Cunningham. Don't forget as well that the Matchday Bucket is still operational throughout the summer for the food bank. And if you want to make any kind of donation to the food bank, then please drop onto the food bank bucket. And it's available at NUFC fansfoodbank.co.uk, and drop in whatever you can, and you enter into the prize draw for the watch, which will be drawn on the 6th of August by Keith Patterson at the charity pool night. So get yourself onto that website now and make a donation. And also, don't forget, we have got the Fab 4 t-shirt on my Twitter at Steve Wraith. Get your bids in now, and all proceeds from that go to the food bank. So, George, back to you, mate, for your next recollection.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, it's the replay of the match that Neil's just talked about.
Right.
It's the Wednesday night at 15th of January. And of course, the big difference between the original match and the replay was Keegan was the manager of the original match. And by the time the replay came, Dalglish was manager of the team. And again, another game which should have been a cakewalk and should have been in the 4th round without even thinking about it. But we managed to get an early goal from Lee Clark, but 33 minutes, 36,400 in the ground, and but then we've seen, at least I've seen, why Kirbishley got a reputation. He outthought we were the better team, but Charlton played to their strengths and made us look ordinary. There was no way we were going to get a pile of goals that everybody thought we were going to get. And then lo and behold, as we got towards the last 10 minutes, a lad called Mark Robson slid one in from nowhere. And of course, we're in extra time. And the extra time was quite exciting. And of course, highlighted by the fact that the winner was one of the pile driver free kicks from Alan Shearer on 100 minutes. What team, though, it's interesting. Heslip, Watson, Beresford, Batty, Albert, Peacock, Lee Clark, Beardsley, Shearer, Ginola, and Gillespie. I mean, that team should have walked it against any Charlton team, but they didn't. But Charlton had 1 or 2 players who caused us troubles. A lad called Leyburn and and this lad Mark Robson. Carl Leyburn and Mark Robson were two very lively players that kept on their toes. But as I say, it took a Shearer pile driver free kick in extra time that we got through it. Was it the foreteller of what we're going to see from Dalglish? Well, sadly, I think it probably was, because sitting on the bench, he took Ferdinand out the team from the original game and put him on the bench. Barton was on the bench, and Stuart Elliott was on the bench as well. So I think we saw what was the start of the big changes under Dalglish. But a game we should have won easily, and we struggled to win it in extra time. But thanks to a Shearer pile driver on 100 minutes, we got through to the next round. So that's my second recollection.
Great stuff, George. Okay, Steve Wilkinson.
Well, I'm going to talk about the game actually just mentioned on the caption by Keith Roll, the 3-0 win in 2002 under our best season under Bobby. He had been there 3 years, and this was the season we ultimately finished fourth and got into the Champions League the following year. And it was a great season. We won significant number of games by decent scores. We actually, in this game, we actually scored our 100th goal of the season. We'd started the season in the Intertoto Cup and scored, game. Remember the 4-4 draw against Troy that I think we sort of won it, whatever that meant. When you ended drawing a game, but you still won. I think about 3 teams won it. I never understood the Intertoto Cup. But we overall we finished the season in fourth, just behind Arsenal, Liverpool, and Man United with 71 points for that this season, and 74 league goals, and we got them in the other goals in what was the 100th goal in this particular game in the League Cup, where we got to the fourth round, and then the quarter final of the FA Cup as well. So it was a pretty good season overall, and we scored, I think we scored 4 about 7 times that season, so we'd love that sort of game now to scoring loads of goals. And, prolific in the scoring, obviously, was Alan Shearer and Robert and Nobby Solana was playing Gary Speed. In this particular game, we took the lead after about 20 minutes with a right-wing corner, which was bullet header from Gary Speed running in. We extended the lead just after half time. A cracking goal from Luana Luar. And we bullet shot. I mean, the lad had a fantastic shot, and he just took a long ball and just chested it down, turned and cracked it in the bottom corner. And then the classic Luar mass somersaults. I think when I've seen a game again on YouTube, I think there's about 6 or 7 flips. And at high speed, if you remember as well. It was a fantastic goal celebration, and we're long for more. He only scored 9 goals in his career at Newcastle. It would have been great if he'd been banging more and doing the same sort of somersaults. And then the third goal, which was in the last minute of normal time, and it was a significant goal because it was Alan Shearer's 200th Premier League goal. Great ball forward from Gary Speed, and Shearer picked it up just outside the penalty area and banged the ball in the bottom corner. And that was his 200th Premier League goal. Went on to score plenty more in the years to come. As I say, we finished fourth that season, and it was a fantastic performance and the enjoyable football at the time. Bobby was playing and was manager, and obviously the year after we're in the Champions League and did pretty well in that, as you might remember. So that's my third game. April 2002, 3-0 victory.
Yeah, great stuff. Steve Hasty, getting ready for part 2 of your saga after the big build-up.
Right, well, the next one I went for was Saturday the 28th of October 2006. Live on Sky, 5:15 kickoff. The whole of the country watching. Conditions were mild, dry, and as Biffa says, or as Niall says on this, because it's actually Niall who's written this one up, mild, dry, and immensely frustrating. Those were the conditions of this particular game. a 0-0 draw. And we shouldn't be surprised it was 0-0 draw, because since that 1-1 draw that we'd had in 2004, 2005, the following two home games that we'd had against Charlton had both finished 0-0. So 2005, 2006, 0-0 draw. 2006, 2007, 0-0 draw. That was where we were. So this is a 0-0 draw. We're playing with the team was Harper, Carr, Moore, and Bramble at centre back, Babayaro. Midfielder Scott Parker, Solano, Nicky Butt, and Charles Zogbia. And a forward line of Damien Duff and Rossi. Do you remember him? I think we got him on loan, didn't we?
Yeah, I remember him. It was
that was
from Man
before-
United.
Man United, wasn't it? Man
That's
United.
right. Got him from Man United. Giuseppe Rossi. Right. That was where. Right. So you look at it, it was 48,000. The referee, incidentally, was a certain Mike Dean, who didn't give a penalty for us, which we shouldn't be surprised about because we're used to that. Has he ever given a penalty? Damien Duff got brought down in the second half and we didn't get a penalty. And as we'll find out, Graham Souness was absolutely furious with it. He thought it deserved a penalty because Damien wouldn't go down if he hadn't have been fouled. That's it. That's the usual referee manager's cliches, isn't it? When he doesn't get something going his way. Anyway, there's 48,000 there. And it says there's an excellent description of apparently we had a Tune Ultra section, the singing section at the very top of the John Hall stand. They did their best to strike up some banter with the small away section that was there. We're not sure who their "We Hate Cockneys" chant was aimed at, but it didn't seem to provoke a hand gesture from Glenn Roeder. And the reason for that was the fact that this was a game where we once again had no goals from open play in the last 7 hours and 16 minutes of football in the Premiership. We'd had one goal from open play in the last 9 hours of football. So people were starting to get a little bit iffy about Glenn at this particular time. But we have to even it up. We have to say the what they said about the Charlton fans, that they were keen to get their manager to wave to them. However, despite their awful start to the season, they also sang a version of the Addams Family's theme tune. We're not quite sure who they could have been aimed at, but it certainly wouldn't look out of place next to Lurch or Uncle Fester, because their manager was a certain Ian Dowie at the time. So they're singing the Addams Family chant to him. We're trying to get Roeder to wave to the fact that we hate Cockneys. So obviously it was so entertaining on the pitch that the lads were just doing their own thing by this point. So we've got Glenn Roeder complaining. We said that there should have been a penalty. There's no way that Damien Duff would go down if he wasn't fouled. And it said. Some of the little things, obviously, what I'm trying to get at is that there's nothing new about us having a go at managers. This is the way that it says we all have different views and different perspectives. And as manager of Newcastle, Glenn Roeder is doing what Graham Souness, Bobby Robson, Ruud Gullit, and Kenny Dalglish all did when he was feeling the pressure. He comes out on the offensive with all his guns blazing. I suppose we'll probably do the same if we ever fulfilled our dreams and got to be in charge of this damn club. Oh, it's quite clever. It said, however, the collective gloom and doom that descended on Tyneside after this latest failure cannot be talked away or ignored. We finished the weekend one place above the relegation zone with just 2 wins and 2 draws out of 10 games. We only scored 7 league goals so far and are in the middle of a congested run of fixtures with just 1 fit striker. That same fit striker is ineligible to play for us in Europe. And we were heading to Palermo for a UEFA Cup game that weekend, the following midweek, before we carried on. It then goes on to explain where we were. Bear in mind, this is October, by the way. This is October. So Martins, who so far has done very little to justify his huge transfer fee, is now absent with tight hamstrings. And Roeder admitted that players with speed often do pick up hamstring strains. We need to protect them for the next couple of weeks, and don't we know? Just know I will have to, having waited forever for our other speed merchant Dyer to get his hamstrings in order. So you can tell the lads were really, really paid off about this. Amiobi's been carrying a hip injury for a couple of seasons, and now so his absence was inevitable. And with Owen Remember him, Michael Owen, out
Yeah.
for the year. This injury crisis continues to deepen. So there we are, a club in crisis again. Nobody knows what's going on. The fans are screaming at the manager. We're not getting the results, and we're not getting the support or the backing of the board. We haven't spent money on players. The ones that we have spent are injured or they're rubbish. This is 2007. It could have been 2021, couldn't it? But it just goes to show, we can have a really, really bad game against Charlton and manage to scrape a 1-1 draw, but we can play even worse than that and end up 0-0. We've still got points. We've still got the points for those games. But quite frankly, I remember the disharmony. I remember where we thought we were heading. I remember the way that the club was just degenerating, and we were all totally disillusioned. And you hate to be like that as a fan, but sometimes situations just get the best of you. And certainly that particular season, I think we were starting to get to the end of our tether with everything that had gone on, the way that we'd been treated. Obviously, Shearer had retired by this point, and Owen was no longer playing. He was injured. Everything was going wrong for it. And I think there was just like, this is October and there's a cloud of doom hanging over the football club. God, what a Joe's comforter I am, aren't I?
We could have done with a takeover coming just after that, could we not?
would have been handy.
Mike Ashley coming in.
I think imagine if there'd been a takeover then and we got some billionaire to actually snap us up and drive us forward. That would have been fantastic. If only I'd thought of that.
Great stuff. This is what the Retro Show is all about. And apologies to people in the chat who are going on about news breaking about Rafa potentially going to Everton. We don't talk about it on a Wednesday night. We do 6 nights a week where we talk about other stuff. But this is Retro Night where we look back on games gone by. So tune in tomorrow night with Super Mac and Gibbo, and on Friday night with the Fab Four to find out what our views are on moving events. My understanding, of course, is still that Rafa would not be going to Everton, but wait and see. Stu?
Hopefully Steve Hasty feels better after that. So, but I start cheering people.
The hasty rant.
Yeah, it was. It was a hasty bone, I think. But anyway,
I've been waiting 2007 for that one.
Well, I've got Steve sitting that way, but Mitch sitting that way is doing his own bit of self-promotion here. If you look at the screen, it just says Mitch Matters.
Mitch, it does, yeah.
You need a cuddle, son. Mitch Matters. Right, from the 1989-90 season, fast forward, let's do it, that's 3 years to the 92-93 season. The 10th of March, Rob Lee now plays for us against his old team, and normally happens against us, but it happened for us this time. He scored in the first minute. This was our promotion season, one of the favourite seasons I've witnessed. The promotion season under Keegan, that is. We've had plenty of promotion seasons. This was on the back of, we'd been to Tranmere about 10 days before that. We won 3-0 and it was a fantastic day, fantastic game, but that's for another time. The Charlton equalised after Kevin Scott slipped, and the ball got put between him and Howie, and Kevin Scott slipped, and they got one back. But when I checked out this game, I didn't realise it was someone's debut for us. Now, this person should have played for us longer, or should have come to us earlier, because he had the old cliche wonderful left foot, and that was Scott Sellers, who managed to knock one in against the Macklins only a few weeks later as well. That was Scott Sellers' debut, and he marked it with a brilliant assist from a free kick, which Ned Kelly knocked in to just right on the last minute before half time. So we bookended the half with the goal at either end. Pretty confident, playing well. Clarkey was probing, Liam O'Brien's spraying the ball about. It's one of those games you know you're going to win. Then shortly after half time, we kicked off. We had a corner and we got sloppy. I think it was one of those times where we knew we were better than opposition, and we got sloppy. The ball broke away. Now it's something that's, I think it was George that mentioned before. No, George mentioned the player, but Mitch mentioned that there's always people that seem to have good games against us, or go on score runs against us. Carl Leyburn, who George mentioned, is one of these players. He ended up getting their second goal, which was the equaliser. And then it was like the Three Little Pigs story, you know. We huffed and puffed, but we just couldn't blow the wall down or the door down to get the third goal. We had also recently signed Andy Cole, and the next game 3 days later was his debut. So the players that were playing for us that day, the forward players, I suppose, which you've got, there was the Kelly and Peacock and Liam O'Brien, I mentioned, Lee Clark. They all had chances. They all had some. I think Rob Lee had a good chance as well near the end. But Liam O'Brien did a bit of magic. He chipped the ball over someone's, flicked it over Gazaresque over someone's head. Shouldn't talk about that with the game coming up on Friday. But anyway, he flicked it over Gazaresque over someone's head, and the ball just wouldn't sit down for him, and the chance finished. But even after that, we didn't even mind getting 1 point, because we were on the crest of emotion, a wave of emotion. We knew that we were going to get promoted. And from all the fantastic football we've seen, bear in mind we've been starved of it for years. All the fantastic football we've seen that season under Keegan, there was no booze. You know, the players still got clapped off the pitch. And that's why it was one of my favourite seasons. I went to nearly every game, in home and away, and met some great people and visited some wonderful and some really rubbish stadiums as well. So that was my second game. I just thought, because I mentioned Rob Lee the first one, I want to mention the second one in a positive light, because he is a bit of a legend for us, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's me done.
Great stuff, mate. Great stuff. Fantastic.
Thanks.
All right, Mitch. Oh, you're on mute. You've done a spenny, I think.
Yeah. Right,
That's it. You're on. You're on.
My second game's been mentioned already as well. But it ties in some ways with the first game, 18th of January 92, and it's a home loss 3-4 against Charlton. And it turned out this game was Osvaldo Ardiles' last game as manager. And what a fitting way to end his time at Newcastle United, because this was everything that was Osvaldo Ardiles as our manager. Everything that was the root of the fabled myth that would prefer to see our team lose 4-3 than see a boring 1-0 win. Everything that Ozzy did, which in some respects paid off later, because he blooded so many kids and he brought so many people in that Keegan then got the benefit of eventually. But when you look at the team, you can see why this game happened the way it did. This is only the second time in history that we've been 3-0 up at home and then lost the game. But if you look at our back four, it was Steve Watson, Alan Thompson at fullback, and the centre-backs were Kevin Scott and one of the Appleby brothers. So the senior defender was Kevin Scott, senior defender, and he was still a relatively inexperienced player. And then our options off the bench was Steve Howie, who then was a centre-forward, and David Roach, who again was another kid. And so scattered amongst the players we had, like Kevin Brock in the team, for example, were loads of kids who really in critical positions. So, the game flow was nuts. We went 1-0 up after 24 minutes with Clark, 2-0 at 31 minutes with Andy Hunt, and then Brock put it 3-0 up on 34 minutes. And then they got to 3-1, I think was somewhere around about 36 minutes. A young fullback called Barnes, who was a right-footed left-back. I think he ended up at Chelsea eventually. And he did the thing that an experienced defender would know. He's a left-back, but he's only got a right foot. So what did we do? We let him cut inside, and he hit the screamer at the bottom corner. Brilliant. You know, show him the outside. He doesn't want to go there. And so they just let him come inside. And I did a little bit of digging, looking at sort of what Charlton fans had said about this who'd been at the game. And I found a Charlton forum where people were commenting on it. And somebody said who'd been at the game, he said, we knew the minute we got that one goal, the panic just descended amongst the crowd and amongst the players. Because they'd been on a terrible run and they knew once they'd conceded one, there was a good likelihood they were going to concede a second. And duly we did, pretty much straight from kickoff in the second half. And again, another player who always played well against a lad called Colin Walsh, who had a really, you're talking about sweet left foot of Scott Sellers. He had a pretty sweet left foot as well. And so he gets them 3-2. And then it was all Charlton. The minute it got to 3-2, the panic stations, everybody's running around. It's like Dad's army. Nobody can do anything. Everybody's flapping. 3-3 from Walsh on 76 minutes. And then who wraps it up at the end to make it 3-4? Bloody Pardew. Alan Pardew. And if you look at the goal, he took 3 goals to put it in the back of the net. But that again was, we had, by that time, my back forward descended into something like Harold Lloyd's meets Charlie Chaplin, and it was just all over the place. And if you look back at the goals, you can see why. This was everything that was brilliant about Osvaldo Ardiles and everything that was terrible about Osvaldo Ardiles, all wrapped up into one game right at the end of his tenure at Newcastle United. And in many ways, I'm thankful for what Ozzy did, because some of those young players eventually formed the key part of that team that then came on to become the entertainers. And the experiences they had trying to defend 3-0 leads terribly paid off down the line, I guess, in some sort of weird way. But, I think that was the one game that sums up Ozzy Ardiles' time at Newcastle United, and it was his last as manager.
Great stuff. Some fantastic recollections from all of you guys tonight, as always, and always nice to take a trip down memory lane. As always, I put together a list of celebrities. Some of them we always find quite bizarre, but not many bizarre ones tonight, but it's up to the panel to try and guess who these celebrities are who support Charlton. So we'll start with this one.
Spenny Mag.
Heath Patterson.
Oh, man. Is it not him from Brushstrokes?
Yes,
Carl
it is.
Howman.
Carl Howman.
Yeah.
Carl, that's it. Carl Howman, correct. Okay. Mitch, this one's for you, I bet.
Ooh. Drummer.
Right.
Oh, man. Oh,
Some might say it's him from Oasis.
Well
it's
done.
the second one from Oasis, isn't it?
White.
Alan White.
yeah.
Alan White.
Yeah.
Alan White, the drummer from Oasis.
Lee Ryan from Blue.
Lee Ryan from Blue.
Sue Perkins.
Aye.
Sue Perkins.
Steve Ryder.
Steve Ryder.
Steve Ryder.
Steve Ryder.
Steve Davis.
Steve Davis on the right-hand side.
Yes, shout.
Ray Winston.
Nope.
No. Didn't think he was
Who's that?
I think he's
He's an hammer.
He's an hammer. Yeah.
Gary Bushell? Gary
Nope.
Bushell? No.
Although Gary Bushell is a Charlton fan. I
Yeah.
didn't pick him. He's too obvious. He looked too obvious anyway.
Why, I thought you had the gear on.
No, I can't get him.
Celebrity gangster Dave Courtney.
You're joking.
Is it?
That's what he turned up at court one day like.
No.
And he punched an undercover police officer who was trying to get him sued. So Dave Courtney, celebrity gangster. Then he gave the police officer a right-hander who had called him a grass. Yeah, interesting case that. I didn't go to it. Okay, this one.
Nicholas Lyndhurst.
Nicholas Lyndhurst.
Who said Rodney Trotter?
Rodney Trotter.
Correct, Steve. Correct, Steve. You are correct.
Rodney Charlton Trotter.
Nicholas Lyndhurst doesn't support Charlton, but Rodney Charlton Trotter does.
Charlton Trotter.
Rodney Dave, wasn't it? His nickname was Dave.
Well, Dave, only by one person, yeah. But there you go, Rodney Charlton Trotter on his driving licence.
Michael Grade.
Michael Grade, yes.
Michael Grade.
Oh, Dame Kelly.
Dame Kelly.
Kelly Holmes. Yeah.
Thought I might have tricked you there with the uniform.
Yeah.
Jim Davison. Jim Davison.
Jim Davison. That's it. So I did get one. Dave Courtney did for me, which is great. Got one there. Okay, players that played for both teams, and of course there might be the odd manager slipped in as well. But yeah, we'll go.
John Barnes.
John Barnes.
Andy Hunt.
Andy Hunt with a bit of a shorter hairstyle there than he had at Newcastle.
Oh, Boyer. Phil.
Lee Boyer.
Lee Boyer.
Lee Boyer. Legend, beating the Macklins in the playoffs.
Was that
Gavin Peacock, is it?
Gavin Peacock.
Aye. That's Pardew.
Alan Pardew.
John Joe.
Belvey. Rob Lee.
Robbie Lee.
Who's that?
Is that Neil Redfern?
Neil Redfern. Great shout, mate. Well done.
That's a Macklin referee as well, isn't it?
I was going to say extra point for the referee.
It's the
Miller guy, isn't it? Miller? Winter.
That lad from Borough, man.
Winter. Well done.
Jeff Winter. Yeah.
Scott Parker.
Oh,
He looks lost.
who's that?
Is a name that's never been. I don't know if I recognise him. It's not George Hope, is it?
It's not.
No. That's going back too far.
Can't get that one.
No.
Stumped you. It's Rob Elliott.
Never.
Of course it is.
Oh, the goalkeeper.
Jeez, left eye.
Brilliant.
Unbelievable.
Andy Five.
Andy Five.
Keith
Keith
Gillespie.
Gillespie.
And last but by no means least,
Kitson.
Paul
Kitson.
Paul Kitson. Well done, lads. Hey, I stumped you on both today, so that's good news. Gives us an extra bounce in me step tonight. Okay, so let's get the team sorted. Mitch, will come to you first this time. You always tend to be last. So
While I was doing my research for this, I come across that Charlton had a player called Rod Fanny, and I wish we'd signed him. I really would have loved to have gone up to get me replica shirt for that one that weekend. Anyway, I've gone for a 3-5-2 with Rob Elliott in goal. Me centre back three are Oguchi Onweyu, who we mentioned last week. You see, you never mentioned somebody for ages and he turns up twice in a row. Amdi Faye and Kevin Scott. Then my midfield on the wings, I've got Keith Gillespie and Darren Ambrose. And then in the centre midfield, Rob Lee, Scott Parker with Gavin Peacock playing in front of them. And then up front, I've got John Barnes and Andy Hunt.
great stuff.
And as a manager, I guess I've got to go for Pardew, even though I really don't want to.
Okay, Stu.
Well, I had Pardew as a manager. I've got a 3-5-1-1 or 3-2-4-1 or 3-1-4-1 formation, but it's attacking anyway. Similar to Mitch. Similar to Mitch as the goalkeeper in the back three, which is Robbie Elliott, Faye, Scott, and Gucci Goo. And then the wingers, I had John Barnes on the left wing. I had to put Keith Gillespie on the right wing because he's in our fantasy Euro thing.
Yeah.
And if I didn't pick him, I'd get grief for it. So he's on another wing. Then the midfield 2 or stroke 3 of Parker, Boyer, with Rob Lee and Gavin Peacock, and up front on his Todd Leon Best. That's my team.
Okay, Steve Hasty.
Right, I went for Elliott and goal. I got a back three of Ambrose, Kevin Scott, and Amdi Faye. I've got a midfield 5 of Boyer, Parker, Lee, Rob Lee, that is, Gavin Peacock, and Keith Gillespie. And I've got Paul Kitson and Andy Hunt up front. And I'm going to ask for permission of everybody, and I hope you're all right with this, guys. I'm going to ask if I can have Kirbishley as manager, because simply for the fact that since Kirbishley left there, he's been linked with every manager's job that's come up at St James's Park since 2006. In fact, probably every manager's job since he took over on his own in 1991. Now, and he was manager from 1991 to 2006. And during that, since that spell, since he left, they have had 18 managers in 15 years, including 4 managers in 2016 and 3 managers in 2015 and 2 in 2014 and 2011 and 2 in 2021. So they love their managers, but we've had quite a choice. I could have gone Pardew, could have gone Dowie, could have gone Boyer, I could have gone Bob Stokoe, but lads, I want Kirbishley as my manager, just so that we can finally bury that ghost of Kirbishley.
Yeah, okay. Fair play, mate. Steve Wilkinson.
Yeah, well, I've borrowed the England formation of 4 at the back, 2 in front of them, 3 and then 1 up front. And stop Rob Elliott, short of defenders. I didn't spot that one, the Egi Gugi Guchu or whatever his name was. Darren Ambrose, Kevin Scott, Amdi Faye, and David Young, who hasn't been mentioned, I don't think so far. In front of them, Lee Boy and Scott Parker, Keith Gillespie, Rob Lee, John Barnes, with Gavin Peacock up front. I've got a sub that the guy's name I mentioned before. He's worthy of a place in the squad because George Hope, he only ever scored 1 goal, but it was the winner against Man United in 1972. So he's worthy of being included in the squad. And I went for Pardew as manager as well. So that was mine.
Okay, and last but by no means least, George.
I went for Dowie as manager. I couldn't stomach Pardew, so I gave in. Just left it to Dowie. Rob Elliott, as usual, 1 to 11 from me. Rob Elliott, David Young, Amdi Faye, Scott Parker, Kevin Scott, Keith Gillespie, Rob Lee, Gavin Peacock, Leon Best, John Barnes, and a lad called Reg Evans outside left, simply for sentimental reasons, because I actually played with Reg Evans. He was the left winger in the year that Newcastle won the FA Youth Cup in the 50s, along with Ken Hale, Jackie Bell, and people like that. They beat Chelsea in the FA Youth Cup, which was a big surprise. And as I say, I did get the chance to play with him just before he disappeared. Another player, by the way, who, you remember I said to you last week about somebody just wouldn't do what he was told. Well, Reg Evans was another wouldn't do what he was told. That's why he left Newcastle. So that's my 11.
Great stuff, as always. A great show.
Nobody picked Shelby. I noticed nobody picked Shelby.
No surprise. No one picked Peter Garland, and neither did I. In the photos, it's just because I couldn't find him. But I don't think he actually played a game in Newcastle, if I can remember rightly. But he did play up at Charlton. But great show as always, lads. Thanks for taking the time to do the research. Brilliant show, and look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, lads. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Good night, everybody.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all